What would you do if the strongest person in the family quietly sold the one thing he loved, hid the sacrifice behind a calm smile, and still sat down at dinner pretending everything would soon be all right? That afternoon, the pomelo orchard glowed with young fruit and late sunlight, but nothing in the beauty around Jack could lighten the burden pressing on his chest. The company had stalled, contracts had disappeared. Debt tied to Mother Loy's land kept growing month after month because the land had been trapped inside a failed planning project that could not be sold at a fair price. The interest rose like a punishment. The house stayed warm only because he kept swallowing his own fear before anyone else could see it. So, he sold his car, redeemed the land title, and told almost no one. In another corner of that same day, Tu Tien stood in the noisy countryside market selling pomelos, smiling through exhaustion, even buying new baskets so she could keep working harder beside him. By evening, the whole family would sit together over a simple meal, and the truth would finally come into the room. Jack had been carrying too much alone. Yet, around that table, between regret, apology, and quiet promises, something stronger than financial ruin would reveal itself. Not a miracle, something more human and enduring. A family deciding that one man would no longer bear the whole storm by himself. Golden afternoon light spread across the pomelo trees, warming the leaves and rounding the fruit with a soft glow. The air smelled of green branches, dry grass, and ripening skin. In another season of life, Jack might have stood there with relief in his lungs and pride in his hands. He might have looked at the orchard and seen abundance. That day, he saw only distance. Every branch looked calm, but he was not. He reached up and twisted a pomelo gently from the tree. The movement was steady, practiced, almost automatic. Yet his face gave him away. The strain in his eyes had deepened. Fatigue seemed to live permanently at the corners of his mouth. He looked like a man who had not allowed himself real rest in months, not because he did not want it, but because life had stopped offering it. When Luan arrived, Luan saw the orchard, saw the baskets, saw Jack's careful hands, and saw beneath all of it the exhaustion sitting inside his friend like a hidden injury. He came closer without noise and sat with him in the shade after many days apart. For a while, neither spoke. Then Jack exhaled the kind of sigh that belongs to someone who has been holding too much in silence. He began talking about work first, because work was the easiest doorway into everything else. Since the beginning of the year, no new contracts had come in. Projects had thinned out. Income had become uncertain. The company still stood, but only barely. It was not dramatic collapse. It was the slower, crueler form of decline that makes a person anxious every day and ashamed every night. Then he spoke of the debt. Mother Loy's land had become tangled in a planning project that ruined liquidity and trapped value where it could no longer be touched. On paper, there was still land. In real life, there was only interest mounting every month. That interest had become like a mountain pressing down on the entire family. Jack said it quietly, but the weight of it hung in the orchard air, like humidity before rain. He admitted he was financially stuck. That phrase sounded simple, yet Luan heard the truth inside it. Jack was not merely short of money, he was cornered by responsibility. Every direction led to another sacrifice. Every solution created another wound. He had thought so much, calculated so much, worried so much, that he was tired to the bone. So he had made a decision. He would temporarily set aside some of the company work and go back to clean up the old farm he had once bought for Hung. He needed land under his hands again. He needed something honest and physical, something not made of paperwork, debt, and negotiations. He said that maybe, when Hung returned one day, there could be a warm surprise waiting for her there. The thought alone kept a small, stubborn flame alive in him. Luan listened with the patience of a real brother. When he finally spoke, His voice was deep and warm. He told Jack that a man could not spend his entire life surviving only for burdens. Then he reminded him that they had both once been blessed with wonderful mothers. That kind of love was reason enough not to surrender to bitterness. Jack nodded, but his eyes stayed somewhere beyond the orchard. The conversation deepened under the tree shade. Jack asked Luan to support a few pending projects because he truly wanted to spend more time back at the farm for a while. Luan agreed immediately. Then they began talking about the little farm itself. A few plots, a ready house, a peaceful pond garden, trees that still had life in them. It sounded like a simple place, but in Jack's mind it had become more than land. It was a place where he hoped breath might come easier again. He also admitted something else. He still ran and cycled with his girlfriend to motivate her, to keep their spirits from sinking too low. Even in pressure, he was still trying to carry encouragement into someone else's life. That was Jack's way. He kept giving long after his own reserves had nearly emptied. Then, almost casually, he said he had sold his car. The sentence struck Luan harder than any complaint had. Jack explained it plainly. He sold the car to redeem the land title for Mother Letty after she had mortgaged it to buy land in a project that failed. He did not want to borrow more money, because borrowing meant another debt and another chain, so he cut away something of his own life instead. Luan scolded him the way only a true friend can. Why had he not called? Why had he not trusted him enough to speak? Luan had spare money from building his house. He could have transferred it. He would have done it gladly. The rebuke did not come from pride. It came from hurt. Friendship is not only standing beside someone in laughter. It is being allowed into the room when they are breaking. Jack gave him a sad smile. To him, the car was only a means of transport. He would buy one back later. But his mother's land title had to come first. Peace in the house had to come first. The family had to remain standing. That was all. Luan heard the words and understood the man behind them all over again. Jack had a dangerous habit of measuring sacrifice only by whether he believed he could survive it personally. Usually, he never counted the cost to himself honestly. Before they rose, Luan told him he hoped all of Jack's plans would still come true: his work, his farm, his love, his peace. It was a quiet blessing, but it landed with real weight. At the busy countryside market, Tu Tien stood beside her basket of freshly picked young pomelos, calling out to customers with a voice bright enough to make the fruit sound sweeter. Big ones were 10,000, small ones were 5. She peeled samples for people to taste and smiled as she said this season's Catquay pomelo was especially sweet. Around her, the market moved in its usual rhythm of bargaining, footsteps, dust, laughter, and hunger. She worked with joy that was partly real and partly discipline. Customers came and went. She wrapped fruit, counted money, joked a little, and kept her face open and warm even when her body was already tired. Then she bought 2 new baskets from a vendor, one large and one small, for 330,000. They were not pretty purchases, they were tools. When she tried one on and adjusted the weight, her face lit up with satisfaction. New baskets meant easier harvesting. Easier harvesting meant a little more help for the household. That was how her mind worked now. Every small act tied back to survival together. Back at the house, Jack came in carrying bags full of groceries and greeted Mother Lud and Uncle Doong. The moment he entered, Mother Loy's face changed. Her worry was always close to the surface now. The land project had become the great regret of her life. She blamed herself not only for the money lost, but for the way the loss had entered her children's bodies and days like a poison. She asked about everything with a voice already trembling. Jack answered gently. He told her not to think too much. He said he had arranged some matters. He hid the truth about the car a little longer because he knew that if she learned it too soon, her guilt would become even heavier. That was his instinct in every crisis. Shield her first, carry the pain second, speak of himself last. Mother Lardy looked at him with tears she could not hide. She said she had once believed she would never get through this. Yet she trusted Jack, trusted his dynamism, his care, his ability to think ahead. Her faith in him was beautiful, but it was also heartbreaking, because he was only one man, not a wall built to hold every disaster. Then Uncle Doong brought the conversation toward the future. He discussed 2 plots of land for a new farm. One over 1 hectare for 450 million. Another 2 hectares for over 200 million, both with ready fruit trees. Jack responded immediately, analyzing them with clarity despite the emotional weight already sitting on him. He suggested prioritizing Uncle Trung's plot because it was bigger, cheaper, and more reasonable to renovate. Mother Lodi and Tu Tien added thoughts of their own. Maybe something close to the old farm. Maybe somewhere peaceful enough that the family could truly settle. Slowly, the room changed. Worry did not leave, but hope entered through practical planning. That is often how families survive ruin, not by dreaming wildly, but by discussing hectares, roads, fruit trees, and what can still be salvaged from a broken season. When Tu Tien arrived back from selling pomelos, the circle closed fully. Jack looked at all of them and decided he would cook dinner himself. It was not a grand gesture. It was a way of warming the house from the inside. Mother Lori praised him for being capable. She praised Tu Tien for being hardworking and skillful. Tu Tien told the story of the new baskets, and everyone smiled, briefly, almost with relief. During dinner, Jack finally apologized to his mother for hiding the sale of the car. He admitted he had done it because he did not want her to feel worse. Mother Lottie did not scold him. She understood at once. She knew he had hidden it out of love. She only hoped that whatever happened, the children would keep loving one another and stay close. Jack promised he would resolve everything soon. Tu Tien and Uncle Doong added their own words of encouragement. Around that humble table, with food between them and debt still outside like a waiting storm, something changed. No miracle arrived, no money fell from the sky, but truth entered the room, and once truth is shared, pain becomes lighter to carry. Mother Lourdes' greatest tragedy had wounded the family, yes, but it had also revealed each person's character. Jack, carrying silently and sacrificing privately. Tu Tien, working with fruit and baskets and market sweat to help bear the load. Luen, offering money and brotherhood without calculation. Uncle Doong, practical enough to talk about tomorrow even while today still hurt. And Mother Loie, loving so deeply that regret had nearly consumed her. The dinner did not erase the interest or solve the land problem, but it reminded them that Jack was no longer the only one holding the roof up with his bare hands. And sometimes, that is how hope first returns, not as rescue, but as a family choosing, at last, to carry the same burden together. Even in hardship, love became practical, friendship became provision, and family became the place where shame stopped and courage quietly began again.